Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, well, we're tackling something really relevant for anyone feeling overwhelmed by information. It's this idea, this paradox, that knowing less can actually mean you understand more. I mean, think about it. We're drowning in data, right? Getting facts isn't the hard part anymore. It's grasping the scale of those facts. So we've pulled together some sources looking at this ancient theme of, well, limited perception. Human insignificance, really, against the big picture. It's rooted in the book of Job, chapters 25 and 26 specifically. And our mission today, our deep dive, is to figure out how we can use this ancient wisdom as a critical thinking tool. How do we process all this information without just skimming the surface?
Yeah, and it really all crystallizes around one incredible sentence. It's Job 26.14. It just perfectly captures what we're talking about. Look, these are but the fringes of his ways, how small a whisper we hear of him. But the thunder of his power, who can understand?
Wow, a whisper versus thunder.
Exactly. That's the core concept. Whether you're talking about, I don't know, quantum physics or global economics or even just understanding history, whatever knowledge we gather, even if it feels profound, it's just that whisper. The thunder is the true scope, the vastness of the subject itself.
So real insight starts by admitting you don't grasp most of it.
Precisely.
Yeah.
You have to acknowledge the scale of what you don't know.
Okay, let's dig into that. A good place to start is maybe the classic example of overconfidence, right? The intellectual know-it-all. We can look at Bildad in the source text.
Bildad, yes.
His speech is short, really tight, and just dripping with confidence. All about divine power, divine righteousness, clean, decisive. Almost sounds like a corporate mission statement.
And that's the giveaway, isn't it? He's confident because his view is so narrow. He and his friends, they genuinely believe they had the complete operating manual for the divine, just based on, well, their limited observations. And the text later just pulls the rug out, revealing that these guys, speaking so definitively, well, they didn't know what they were talking about.
Huh. Sounds familiar. Like maybe some pundits predicting markets or elections based on one tiny slice of data.
Exactly the same dynamic.
Yeah.
It's the paradox in action. Often, the people making the loudest, most certain claims, they actually know the least about the real depth of the subject. They've mistaken their little map for the entire world.
Yeah, the map isn't the territory.
Spot on. They saw what the source calls the minimal work. The tangible stuff, creation, nature, and they confused that with knowing the creator behind it all.
So it's like knowing facts about the weather, maybe tracking rainfall, but having zero clue about the entire climate system driving it.
Perfect analogy. Or seeing a company's cool product, but completely missing the huge economic forces that are about to make it obsolete.
And they tried to box up the infinite, didn't they? Put it in their neat little human definitions. And that seems like the real danger for anyone trying to learn or process information today.
It really is.
Once you think you've got the subject totally defined, you just stop learning. And worse, you start using that limited definition like a hammer.
Right. In their case, they used their tiny definition of how God works to demand Job confess sins he didn't commit, trying to force reality into their preconceived notion.
That's a massive failure of critical thinking, isn't it? When your theory becomes more important than, well, what's actually happening.
The ultimate failure, yes. Your model overrides reality.
Okay, so step one is recognizing our limits. But how do we then actually, respect the depth, the sheer scale of things we can't fully grasp? This takes us into the idea of the unknowable.
Right. To be genuinely knowledgeable, you sort of have to embrace that a huge part of any deep subject is fundamentally beyond full comprehension, at least for now.
That sounds counterintuitive, but it makes sense.
Yeah, and you see this echoed everywhere, across history, in any field that requires real depth. Think of someone like Richard Rolle, that 14th century English writer.
Oh, yeah.
He wrote that when he really started to study the most profound topics, his big discovery was that they were unfathomable and unknowable.
So the more you learn, the more you realize is left to learn.
Exactly. The more data you take in, the bigger the unexplored territory looks. So humility isn't just, a nice personality trait. It's actually a crucial tool for dealing with complexity.
Which means we need to be really skeptical of anyone claiming they've got it all figured out. The source actually warns about this.
Yeah, it does. A very clear warning. If someone claims complete knowledge of something inherently vast, like, say, the ultimate fate of the universe, or the precise long-term effects of AI, or the final truth of a political ideology, that very certainty should be a red flag. It's almost proof they don't grasp the true scale. The claim kind of cancels itself out.
Right. It's like if you truly understood how big it was, you wouldn't claim to have mastered it.
Absolutely. So think about how you apply this when you're consuming information. That person you're listening to, maybe a podcaster or author, even a colleague at work, if they speak with total absolute confidence about things that are just fundamentally huge and complex.
Hold their conclusions loosely.
Very loosely.
Yeah.
Which brings us to a couple of reflection questions. These come straight from the material, and they're really for you, the listener, to consider.
Okay.
First, if someone claims to speak for, let's say, the highest authority in their field, could be business, science, policy, whatever, but they clearly lack that humility we talked about, or they seem unaware of the complexity, how should you adjust your response? Do you trust that certainty?
That's a good one. Okay, what's the second?
The second one is more internal. Think about the facts you do know in your main area of expertise, your professional field, or maybe just a subject you're passionate about.
Right.
What percentage of the total fullness of that subject, of the thunder, do you honestly believe your current knowledge represents? Is it like 10%? Maybe 1%? Even less?
Wow. Just thinking about that ratio.
Yeah. Recognizing that ratio, being honest about it, that's the real difference between arrogance, which blinds you, and genuine insight, which opens you up.
That framing the whisper versus the thunder, it really changes things.
Yeah.
It implies that getting real insight needs more than just, collecting facts.
It requires a different approach,
Right.
a pure, humble heart, the source suggests, not just a brain full of data points.
Because an arrogant person focuses inward on what I know.
Exactly, which naturally limits their view. But a humble person is looking outward, focused on what's beyond them, opening themselves up to the vastness of this system, this subject.
It reminds me of that analogy, like a child describing a parent.
Oh, that's a great comparison. Go on.
Well, a child can tell you accurately, their dad's favorite ice cream or bedtime story he reads, and that description is true.
True, but partial.
Incredibly partial. It's just a tiny sliver compared to the father's entire life, his memories, his experiences, his own inner world. The child's view is accurate for what it is, but it's nowhere near the full reality.
That's perfect. And that ancient wisdom, that understanding of our inherent limits, it translates directly into modern life, especially when we try to plan or predict anything.
Right, because we always have to factor in those forces we just can't see coming or control.
Always. There are always peripheral forces.
Actually, let's bring in that modern example you mentioned, the one from Taiwan in October 2025. It sounds like it really illustrates this clash between our plans, our limited perception, and just raw reality.
Oh, it's quite a story. So this community group, they planned an outdoor worship service. The location was Taroko in Hualien, a place they knew well, a famous ecological park.
Okay, so they felt familiar with the territory.
Intimately familiar, you'd think. They knew the landscape, they had their schedule all set, but then nature just kept throwing curveballs. Their venue had to be moved again and again because of this relentless chain of unpredictable natural events.
What happened first?
Well, first, out of nowhere, there was a mudslide incident at a place called Yanxi Lake. Totally unexpected. Forced them to scrap Plan A.
Okay, so they adapt. Where did they move it to?
They relocated to a national park canyon nearby. Seemed like a safe bet based on, standard knowledge of the area in that season. But then, just a few days later, that canyon suddenly became restricted. Why? Because of this dramatic silt phenomenon, the water level shot up by 50 meters.
50 meters, that's huge.
Unbelievable, right? And this wasn't just some local storm. This was likely the downstream peripheral effect of a distant weather system. Typhoon Fengshan, apparently.
Wow.
Massive forces they couldn't see, couldn't predict, and certainly couldn't stop.
Wow. So even their backup plan was overwhelmed by something they weren't even tracking locally.
Exactly. Their knowledge was local, but the force was regional, or even larger.
So what was Plan C?
Plan C was moving to the coast, a place called Kixingtan. And then, wouldn't you know it, right when the service was supposed to start, fierce wind and heavy rain hit them.
Oh, come on.
Yep, they thought they knew the area, but they only knew the calm version of it. The thunder of nature, quite literally, showed them the limits of their plans and their perception.
That's such a powerful analogy for, anything. Like in business, we build strategies based on normal conditions.
Right, stable markets, predictable supply chains.
But then the thunder hits a pandemic, a sudden political shift, disruptive technology, and it shows just how fragile those normal conditions really are, the unseen peripheral forces. They always have the last word.
They always do. But here's where the story gets even more interesting, I think. The most insightful bit comes after all that chaos.
Okay.
After the disrupted service, a smaller group, about 11 attendees, decided to visit this unusual arc-shaped Catholic church in a nearby town called Xinjiang.
An arc-shaped church. Okay, sounds interesting.
It is. But here's the kicker. 9 of those 11 people were locals. They lived in Hualien, some for many years, and they were completely stunned. They'd never known about this beautiful, unique building right in their own area. They called it a beautiful secret.
No way. They lived right there and missed it.
For years. Isn't that the perfect parallel to what we've been discussing?
It really is. You can be so familiar with your own field, your own town, your own routines, operating inside those boundaries every single day.
And still completely miss the unexpected beauty, the hidden depth right there within it.
That subtlety only shows up when you stop looking for the big, obvious things and maybe approach it with more humility, openness.
Exactly, which ties beautifully into that classic distinction between Martha and Mary in the Gospels. It really clarifies the mindset we should aim for as learners.
Right. Martha was busy, distracted.
Totally consumed. Distracted is the word used. Worried about all the preparations, the outward stuff. She thought she was honoring the guest, Jesus, through her visible effort, her service. Which isn't bad in itself, of course.
But Mary chose differently.
Mary chose the better part. She sat and listened, focused on an inward connection, dependence, absorbing the teaching. It's that crucial difference between frantic activity and focused attention.
So the lesson isn't that action is bad.
Not at all. Martha's enthusiasm, her passion for action, that's needed too. The ideal is maybe combining Mary's mindset, that inner humility, that quiet listening, that obedience to the subtle truth, with Martha's enthusiasm, the passionate drive to act on that truth.
But you need the listening part first. You need to grasp the whisper before you try to command the thunder.
Beautifully put. You need that inner alignment before the outward action makes sense.
Okay, so let's try to synthesize this. We started out recognizing that our view of anything truly vast, whether it's a professional field, a complex world event, even, as we saw, the geography of your own backyard, it's almost always just a tiny fraction.
The whisper.
Right, the whisper compared to the thunder. And true wisdom, genuine insight, seems to demand that we actively resist the urge to define the whole thing based on our little slice.
Resist boxing it in.
And the source material leaves us with one final point of application to think about. It asks you, the listener, what concrete steps can you take, maybe even this week, to cultivate more of that humility, not just as an idea, but practically?
How can you live it out?
Yeah, and how might doing that help you more fully grasp a complex truth, or maybe express it more effectively to others?
That's the challenge. And it leads to a final thought, maybe a provocative one. We tend to measure success, progress, knowledge by what we've managed to master,
Yeah,
what we've completed, defined, answered, the boxes we've picked.
the problems we've solved.
Exactly. But if the real goal of seeking knowledge, especially deep knowledge, is to truly understand the staggering complexity and vastness of reality, well, then perhaps the most critical achievement isn't actually finding the final answer.
What is it then?
Maybe the greatest wisdom lies in knowing, with increasing precision, the limits of the questions we are currently capable of even asking. Understanding the boundaries of our own inquiry might be more valuable than thinking we have all the solutions.